There's not much that I can add to what has already been said today and what has been published. And I would just like to say, in a personal way, that we now have an epidemic of ignorance in this country. It's an epidemiologic problem, is that some 40 million people believe the lies of Donald Trump. And this was pointed out well by Dr. Gilligan and others, that why do people believe these lies? Well, part of it is they know nothing about history. They haven't read Mein Kampf, Hitler's memoir, which is reportedly on Donald Trump's bedside table. There's no proof that he actually reads, but he does have this book, according to reliable sources. And even though we have so many people saying that he is similar in spreading lies the way Hitler did, and Hitler did it on a daily basis. People were forced to have radios and to listen to his speeches. And if you've ever heard Hitler's speeches, he was a great orator. You don't even have to speak the language to understand how moving what he said is. And Trump, when he speaks, is an entertainer. He's not a politician. He's not a philosopher. He's just a entertainer. And that's where he came from. But it's not entertaining to think of what he can do. The other part of my own personal history is that I have witnessed a nuclear explosion. In July of 1962, I was on the flight deck of my aircraft carrier in the Pacific, where I was a weapons officer, and I witnessed an ICBM shot 100 miles straight up with a nuclear bomb exploding above the atmosphere of the world. So there was no sound. It lit up the entire Pacific for an hour or so. We blocked out radio communications from Japan to Hawaii, and that was the last above-ground nuclear explosion the United States did. So I am genuinely afraid of what could happen if this man has the nuclear button. He boasts that he has a bigger button than Kim Jong-un. And what we don't talk about is all the other countries that have nuclear weapons, including Israel, including Pakistan, including India, and probably South Africa, and France, and England, all have nuclear weapons. So even when one blows up, we're not going to know where it came from. So we have to have someone who is sane, someone who is reliable, and all the other factors that were mentioned already this morning by the panel. And we have to make sure that this word gets out, that this man is not to be depended upon. Now, it has been said that we aren't able to diagnose people at a distance. I have to disagree with that, because frequently, as forensic psychiatrists, we're called upon to diagnose people from the death certificates, the medical records, with interviews in jail and places where we don't have all of the lengthy examinations that psychiatrists generally do. You can still make a diagnosis. And that's been done many times with Donald Trump. I'm not going to make a new diagnosis of this man. I'm going to subscribe to the fact that he is a pathological liar and that he's not very smart. And it's very clear, as has been pointed out, that his mental faculties are deteriorating. If you try to read any of his speeches given at his rallies, he does not make sense. And it's clear that this is worse than it used to be. It was bad enough in the beginning, but there are signs of cognitive impairment now. And the mass media made much more of Biden's cognitive impairment, which is relatively mild and somehow based upon his history of stuttering when you listen to him. They don't make that much out of Trump's cognitive impairment. You wonder why. Fox News was sued for lying and had to pay $800 million or so because they were guilty of lying. Yet they're still in business, they're still lying. And you cannot tell what someone thinks if you don't know what they've been watching in the media. The person who watches Rachel Maddow and the guy who watches Hannity are not the same because they've been led astray, and this epidemic of ignorance is to blame. So I have nothing to add in terms of psychiatry or neurology. I haven't examined Trump. Bandy and I tried to get his head scanned when he was president. We actually sent the orders to the White House that he could easily take to any hospital in D.C. to get it done, but he somehow didn't want to do that and didn't want me to look at his brain scan. Generally, I get a brain scan of the people I examine. You'd be amazed what you see when you do that. We can't make a diagnosis from a brain scan, but we can certainly confirm what we thought was going on. The offer is still open, Donald Trump. If you want to get your head scanned, I'd be happy to read it for you.